My parents kicked me out at 16 for choosing art over med school. They said I'd be back begging in a month. 11 years later, my phone lit up. 99 missed calls. Now they're begging. My name is Sarah. I'm 16 years old. And the night my entire life burned down started with one sentence from my mother. You think smearing colors on a canvas is a future? Absolutely not. That's when I knew. The people who were supposed to protect me had just declared war on my dreams. And here's the thing nobody tells you about being a teenager. When your parents decide your passion is worthless, they don't just criticize it. They obliterate it. They make you feel like wanting something different makes you defective, broken, ungrateful. My mother didn't just disagree with my acceptance letter to a prestigious art school across the city. She shredded the envelope right in front of me, little white flakes raining to the floor like the ashes of every hope I'd ever had. I stood there watching my future disintegrate, and my stomach turned to ice. But the worst part, my dad didn't even sit down to have the conversation. He stepped closer, jabbing his finger at the portfolio I'd spent years building, years of late nights and raw fingers, and believing that maybe, just maybe, my parents would see me for who I actually was. You either enroll in pre-med like we planned, he said, his voice cold and final, or you're on your own. No house, no money, no family. Choose. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had someone hold your entire existence hostage over a choice that should have been yours to make? Because that's what this was. Not guidance. Not parenting. Extortion. They were betting I'd fold, that I'd sacrifice myself to keep their approval, that I loved safety more than I loved myself. My cheeks burned. My hands shook so violently I had to clench my fists just to stop them from showing how terrified I was. And then I heard my own voice, barely recognizing it, say the words that would change everything. Then I'm on my own. The look in my father's eyes went dead cold. Not disappointed. Not hurt. Cold. Like I'd just confirmed I was exactly the failure he'd always suspected I was. Good, he said. Pack your junk. You'll be back begging in a month. He yanked the front door open so violently the frame rattled, then slammed it behind me as I stepped out with one old backpack and a sketchbook pressed to my chest like armor. I walked down that dark street feeling my childhood snap behind me like a cut wire. And I swore to myself, standing there on that cracked sidewalk with nowhere to go and no one to call, I would rather starve than crawl back to them. I didn't know then that someday, years later, the begging would come from them. Before I tell you what happened next and how this story spirals into something nobody saw coming, I want to know, what time is it for you right now? Where are you watching from? Because this story is about to travel further than my parents ever thought their perfect reputation could reach. Drop a comment. I'm genuinely curious how far this truth will spread. So there I was, 16 years old, standing on a cracked sidewalk with a backpack that weighed almost nothing and a future that suddenly felt impossibly heavy. That first night, I crashed on a friend's couch, but my mind wasn't with the borrowed blankets or the cheap pillow that smelled like someone else's detergent. My mind was inside a painting I hadn't created yet. I could see it so clearly. A girl reaching for a door while two faceless figures towered behind her, their hands stained with the ashes of burned canvases. That image wouldn't leave me alone. Haunted me. When I finally stepped onto campus a week later, sleep-deprived, terrified, and technically homeless, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not safety but possibility. The studio smelled like acrylic and turpentine, and for the first time in my entire life, no one told me art was a waste of time. No one looked at my work and saw failure. I scraped together every dollar I'd saved, paid the first month of rent on a tiny shared room near school, and picked up shifts at a dingy late-night diner where the coffee was terrible and the tips were worse. During the day, I painted until my fingers cramped. At night, I scrubbed tables and pretended my feet weren't killing me. The exhaustion was brutal, but it still felt better than suffocating in that house where my dreams went to die. And then something shifted. The first real human warmth I felt came from a guy in my foundations class. Wild curls, paint permanently under his nails, the kind of person who looked at the world like it was one giant canvas. He studied my first assignment, a rough charcoal sketch of those two faceless parent figures, and whistled softly. There's anger in this, he said, his voice quiet but certain. Real anger. Don't lose that. I didn't realize it then, but that comment would become the seed of something much darker. Something that would eventually burn my parents' perfect reputation to the ground. What happens when the people who were supposed to teach you about love teach you about survival instead? Stick around. Because the revenge I didn't even know I was planning was just beginning to take shape. Let me tell you about the week everything inside me turned sharp. I woke up drenched in sweat from a nightmare where my mother fed every canvas I'd ever painted into a fireplace, one by one, smiling while the colors curled and blackened. I jolted upright, grabbed my sketchbook, and started drawing the scene exactly as I'd seen it, my hands reaching into the flames, her face warped with satisfaction. The next day, I turned that sketch into a full painting. And every single brushstroke felt like a scream I'd never been allowed to let out. That piece, half confession, half accusation, got attention. Professors lingered in front of it longer than they should have. Students whispered, "This is raw. And who hurt you?" I just smiled thinly and kept painting. I wasn't ready to answer that out loud. Not yet. But here's where it gets darker. Money was still a constant, suffocating problem. My parents had cut me off completely. No calls, no messages, nothing but a silent, deliberate erasure. When tuition came due for the next term, I stood in the financial aid office shaking, only to discover that my scholarship application had been mysteriously withdrawn from the online portal. I hadn't withdrawn anything. I stared at the screen in disbelief, then changed my password and dug deeper. A sympathetic clerk eventually told me someone had called pretending to be me, saying I'd corrected my plans and decided not to pursue art after all. There were only two people who would benefit from sabotaging my future from a distance. My jaw tightened so hard it hurt. If they thought destroying my scholarship would send me crawling home with my tail between my legs, they didn't know me at all. Picked up more shifts. I sold sketches on the street for $20 a pop. I painted until my eyes blurred and my back screamed. At 3 a.m, when the loneliness crept in and the room felt too quiet, one question kept circling in my mind like a vulture. Would you dare walk away from everything you've ever known, even if you knew the loneliness would chew on you every single night? By the time the mid-year student exhibition rolled around, I'd turned all that anger into a series. 3 large canvases. The first showed a child offering a glowing painting to 2 shadowy adults. The second showed those adults tearing it in half, their faces twisted with contempt. The third showed the child walking away, clutching the torn pieces like armor, like proof of survival. My mentor pushed me to submit them as a set. "People need to see this story," she said, her voice firm. "It's ugly and it's honest. That's what good art is." The night of the showcase, the gallery buzzed with chatter, cheap wine, and the click of expensive shoes on polished concrete. I stood by my series with damp palms, pretending I wasn't watching every single reaction like my life depended on it. Some people stared in silence. Others leaned in close, reading the small title card. Inheritance. A guy I'd seen around campus nodded at me. "Who are they?" he asked, pointing at the shadowy figures. "My parents," I said simply. He laughed awkwardly, thinking I was joking. I didn't correct him. As the room filled, my phone started vibrating in my pocket. Unknown number. I ignored it. Then again. And again. I silenced it, forcing myself to focus. That's when I felt it, the shift in the air. The kind of quiet that isn't silence, but tension pulling tight like a wire about to snap. I looked toward the entrance and almost stopped breathing. My mother was standing in the doorway dressed like she was attending a corporate gala, her eyes sweeping the room with that familiar mix of judgment and cold calculation. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating, some stress-induced mirage my brain had conjured. But then her gaze locked onto my series, and her face hardened like cement. She moved toward my work with slow, deliberate steps. The crowd parted around her like they could sense the storm rolling in. "What is this?" she hissed when she reached my corner, her voice low but laced with venom. "Is this how you portray us? As monsters?" Heat rushed to my face, but I didn't look away. "If the shoe fits," I said quietly. Her eyes flashed. She stepped closer to the nearest painting, the one where the adults shred the child's work, and lifted her hand like she wanted to rip the canvas right off the wall. For a heartbeat, I was back in my parents' living room, watching my father snap my sketchbook in half and toss it into the trash while my mother said, "You'll thank us for this someday." My stomach twisted so violently I thought I'd be sick. "Don't," I said, my voice steady even though my pulse roared in my ears. "Touching the work is against gallery rules." People had started to form a semicircle around us. Whispers fluttered through the air like birds scattering. She seemed to finally notice the audience. Her lips curled into a brittle smile, but her eyes stayed sharp as glass. "This is what you've been doing," she said, her voice rising slightly. "Painting our family drama for strangers. You're embarrassing us." "You embarrassed yourself," I replied quietly. "I'm just documenting it." That confrontation should have been the end of it. But it was only the beginning of how my art would dismantle their perfect lives piece by piece. And trust me, they had no idea what was coming next. Before I could respond, Corey, the guy from my foundations class, appeared at my side like he'd been summoned by the tension itself. "Sorry," he said politely but firmly, looking directly at my mother. "You can disagree all you want, but you don't get to threaten the art. Her work is one of the strongest pieces in this gallery." People nearby nodded. Someone muttered, "She's incredible," just loud enough for my mother to hear. My mom's cheeks flushed an ugly mottled red. She straightened her posture, trying desperately to reclaim control of a situation that had already slipped through her fingers. "Well," she sneered, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "enjoy your little show. We'll see where this art gets you when you're broke and alone." She spun on her heel and marched out, her heels hammering the floor like nails in a coffin. The door swung shut behind her with a soft thud that sounded far too much like the night my dad had slammed it in my face. And here's what she didn't expect. After she left, something unexpected happened. A small crowd gravitated toward my series, whispering about the confrontation they'd just witnessed. It wasn't just about the art anymore. It was about the story, the drama, the raw humanity of a mother publicly rejecting her daughter's truth. A local blogger asked if he could feature the paintings and the story behind them. Invitations for smaller exhibits followed within days. The humiliation she tried to throw over me like a net had slipped right off and landed squarely on her instead. I looked at the empty doorway where she'd stood moments before and felt something twist inside me. Not sadness, not fear, but a cold, sharp resolve that felt almost dangerous. If my parents insisted on turning my life into a battlefield, I would make absolutely certain that every wound I inflicted left a mark they couldn't scrub off their precious reputation. When the applause for the evening's award started a few minutes later and I heard my name called for Most Impactful Series, a question echoed in my mind louder than the clapping. When the people who are supposed to love you turn their backs, would you choose to forgive them, or let your success slice back in their direction like a blade? After the exhibition, life didn't magically get easier. The tiny cash prize barely covered a month's rent, and my parents' rage escalated in all the ways that don't leave bruises but definitely leave scars. First came the emails, long, furious paragraphs about how I was smearing the family name and using trauma as a cheap marketing trick. I blocked them. Then came the calls from relatives, all repeating my parents' carefully crafted version of the story. That I'd run away, that I was mentally unstable, that I was being manipulated by bad influences at school. One aunt even sent a voice message saying my art was demonic. I laughed so I wouldn't cry. But the worst hit came a few months later. I was walking back from my night shift at the diner when a police car rolled slowly up beside me. My throat tightened immediately. The officer stepped out and asked my name, then said they'd received a report of a missing minor believed to be in danger. That minor was me. That concern was my parents trying to drag me home in handcuffs like I was property they'd misplaced. At the station, after what felt like hours of questions and explanations, an officer finally slid a paper across the table for me to sign, acknowledging that I was safe, enrolled in school, working, and under no threat. Legally, they couldn't force me home. The report would be closed. The officer gave me a sympathetic look as I signed. "Some parents don't know when to let go," he murmured quietly. I walked out into the night air with my hands trembling and fury boiling just under my skin. They had tried to paint me as helpless, unstable, incapable of surviving without them. Fine, I thought. Then I'll paint you exactly as you are. That night, I opened my journal, a battered notebook filled with unfinished sketches and angry scribbles, and began to write like it was a confession to my future self. I described every manipulation, every threat, every burned sketch and shredded canvas. I taped in old photos. My dad throwing away my art supplies. My mom tearing up a drawing she'd found hidden under my pillow. I didn't know why, but it felt important to document it all. Like evidence for a trial that hadn't happened yet. A month later, a flyer appeared on the school bulletin board. A regional competition themed Truth and Consequences, sponsored by a major gallery. The winner would receive a sizable grant and a chance to show their work to serious collectors. The phrase "truth and consequences" buzzed in my mind like a live wire. I knew exactly which truth I wanted to put on a wall. I designed a piece that terrified even me. A towering, distorted family portrait. The parents' faces were photorealistic, recognizable to anyone who knew them, but cracked down the middle like shattered porcelain. Behind them, instead of a home, loomed a courtroom, a hospital, and a house with bright red foreclosure signs. Images of the future I wished on them every single time they said I'd come crawling back. The child in the painting, me, had turned her back on the frame entirely, walking toward a blank canvas that glowed like a doorway out of hell. I painted that piece until my fingers ached and my vision blurred. And I knew deep in my bones there was no going back. But would entering that competition shatter whatever was left of our relationship, or finally set me free? I painted until my body screamed at me to stop. During breaks, I reread my journal entries, letting the memories sting so I could drag that pain directly onto the canvas where it belonged. One evening, my phone lit up with my mother's name. Against every instinct screaming at me to ignore it, I answered. "We heard you caused a scene with the police," she began without even a greeting, without even pretending to care how I was. "Do you know how that makes us look? People think we don't care about our own daughter." I laughed. Bitter, sharp, humorless. "You care a lot about how you look," I said. "Not so much about me." There was a pause on the line, heavy and suffocating. Then my father's voice came through, harsh and clipped. "You're still our responsibility until you're 18. Come home and we'll fix this. Drop the art nonsense, enroll in real classes, and we'll pretend this phase never happened." Something inside me snapped cleanly, like a rope cut with a knife. "No," I said quietly, my voice steadier than I'd ever heard it. "You taught me that choices have consequences. Now it's your turn." I hung up before they could respond. My hands shook, but not from fear. From adrenaline. From the fierce, blazing clarity of someone who has finally chosen themselves over the people who were supposed to choose them first. Staring at the half-finished painting in front of me, I knew there was no going back. I would enter the competition. I would tell the truth on canvas, even if it shattered whatever fragile remnants of our relationship still existed. As I layered more paint, another question rose in my chest, heavy and sharp. If the same people who pushed you to the edge suddenly asked for forgiveness, would you give it to them, or let them live with the fallout they created? The weeks before the regional competition bled together in a blur of paint, coffee, and missed sleep. Every single stroke on that canvas felt like I was carving my history into stone, making it permanent, undeniable. Professors stopped by my easel and lingered. One of them, a notoriously harsh critic who made students cry on a regular basis, stared at the family portrait for a long time before saying, "This is uncomfortable to look at. That means it matters." His words lodged in my chest like a strange kind of comfort. Then came the message that made my stomach drop. My mother wanted to meet, to talk about the disaster you're about to cause. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her. Not because I wanted her approval, I was long past that, but because part of me wanted to see the fear in her eyes when she realized I wasn't backing down. We met at a quiet cafe far from campus, somewhere neutral where neither of us had the upper hand. As she walked in, I noticed the differences immediately. The lines around her mouth had deepened. There was a tightness in her shoulders I'd never seen before. Her hair, once perfectly styled and controlled, was pulled back in a rushed, messy bun. For a second, I almost didn't recognize her. "Sarah," she said, sitting down across from me. No hug, no smile. Just my name, flat and careful. "I saw the flyer. Your school posted your entry online. Do you have any idea what that painting will do to us?" I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting the silence stretch uncomfortably. "You mean what it will do to your reputation?" Corrected. "My life is already done being controlled by you." Her jaw clenched visibly. "You're making us look like monsters. People at church, at work." She stopped herself abruptly, glancing away. That slip told me more than she meant to reveal. I leaned forward, curiosity sharpening into something more dangerous. "What happened at work?" Her eyes snapped back to mine, anger and something like panic flickering in them. "Nothing you need to worry about," she said quickly, which meant everything had gone wrong. Later, through a cousin who still secretly texted me updates, I learned the full story. My mother had bragged for years about her perfect daughter headed for medical school. When the truth came out, that she'd kicked me out and cut me off for choosing art, whispers started spreading through her workplace like wildfire. A coworker whose kid went to my art school had seen the Inheritance series online and recognized my mother's face in the shadowy figures. Word spread fast. Complaints were quietly made about her unprofessional behavior when she ranted about ungrateful children during work hours. She was quietly demoted, stripped of a title she'd worked years to earn. Her perfect image had cracked. Sitting across from her now, watching the slight tremor in her hand as she lifted her coffee cup, I felt a dark satisfaction curl in my chest like smoke. "Consequences," I said softly. She flinched. "They think I'm a bad mother," she said, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "They don't understand the sacrifices I made. I wanted stability for you, a real career." "No," I interrupted, shaking my head. "You wanted control. There's a difference." For a moment, the mask slipped completely. I saw not the cold, demanding woman I'd grown up with, but a tired, frightened human whose carefully curated life was falling apart in real time. And then she said two words I never thought I'd hear. Two words that should have changed everything, but somehow made it all so much worse. "I'm sorry," she whispered, the words so soft I almost missed them. I didn't think you'd actually leave." Anger flared hot and immediate in my chest. "You told me I'd be back begging in a month," I said, my voice tight. Her eyes filled with tears. "I was wrong." Her voice cracked like something breaking. "Do you want me to say I was wrong?" "Fine. It was. But that painting, it will destroy whatever respect we have left. Your father's business depends on that image. Our finances." There it was. The real reason she'd asked to meet. Not my pain. Not reconciliation. Their money. Their reputation. Their survival. I sat back slowly, letting the realization sink in like poison. "So you're not here to understand me," I said quietly. "You're here to ask me to protect you. Again." She swallowed hard, unable to deny it. "You could paint something else," she said carefully, like she was negotiating a hostage situation. "Something less personal. If you pull that piece from the competition, your father and I can help you. We can pay your tuition. We can fix the scholarship issues. We can make this right." The offer hovered between us like a poisonous flower, beautiful on the surface, rotting underneath. Safety, stability, financial security. All of it dangling in front of me like bait, on the single condition that I erase the truth and pretend none of it ever happened. I looked at her and saw flashes of memory projected like a film reel. Her ripping up my first real painting when I was 12. Her standing silent while my dad told me to get out. Her calling the police instead of calling to ask if I was okay. "You're not trying to make this right," I said finally, my voice steady. "You're trying to rewind to a version of me that doesn't exist anymore." That version died the night you slammed the door in my face. She flinched like I'd struck her. For a moment, the cafe noise faded completely, and it was just us, mother and daughter, balancing on the edge of a choice that would decide everything. "You want to know what kind of mother you are?" I asked softly, leaning forward. "You're the reason my art has teeth." I stood up, sliding my chair back with a scrape that cut through the quiet tension. "I'm not pulling the painting." She stared up at me, eyes shining with a volatile mix of fury and hurt. "If you do this," she said, her voice trembling, "don't come to us when it all falls apart. Don't expect us to be there when you fail." I almost laughed at the audacity. "You already made sure there was nowhere to come back to," I said. "You did that. Not me." As I walked out of the cafe, my hands trembled violently. Not from fear, but from the raw, overwhelming power of finally refusing to be bought. One thought echoed in my mind like a drumbeat I couldn't ignore. Can a single apology ever erase years of being told your dreams were worthless? Or is there a point where sorry comes too late to matter? The week of the regional competition felt like standing in the eye of a storm, unnaturally calm on the surface, with chaos swirling just out of sight. I barely slept, but this time it wasn't from doubt or fear. It was from the adrenaline of someone about to light a match in a room full of dry paper. The competition venue was massive, a converted warehouse with high ceilings and stark white walls that made every color scream. My piece, Truth and Consequences, hung on a central wall, impossible to miss. The towering, cracked faces of my parents watched over the room like broken saints in a twisted stained glass window. The foreclosure signs and hospital corridors behind them were drawn with ruthless, unflinching precision. The child me walked away at the edge of the frame, heading toward that bright blank canvas like salvation. During setup, I ran my fingers lightly along the dried paint, remembering the nights I'd worked until my hands went numb and my back screamed in protest. I'd hidden small details in the work, subtle references only people who knew our family would catch. My father's watch, my mother's favorite necklace, the engraved plaque from his once thriving business, now splintered and half buried in the background rubble. This wasn't just art. This was testimony. This was evidence. The morning of the opening, my inbox pinged with an email from my father, a cold, threatening block of text about potential legal action if I continued to defame this family. I forwarded it immediately to my professor, who forwarded it to the competition organizers. A succinct reply came back within an hour. "Artistic expression is protected. We stand by our artists." For the first time in my entire life, adults with power were standing on my side instead of against me. When the doors finally opened to the public, the room flooded with people. Critics, local news reporters, collectors, students, curious onlookers. I kept my distance at first, watching from a shadowy corner as they approached my piece. Faces shifted through curiosity, discomfort, fascination. Someone murmured, "That's brutal," sounding almost impressed. I saw a woman snap a photo, then another photo of the name tag below. Sarah Tran, age 16. My age became part of the shock, part of the story people couldn't look away from. And then I saw them. My parents entered together, dressed like they were attending a gala instead of a trial they didn't know they were on. And everything I'd been building toward was about to explode. My father's jaw was already set before he even saw the painting, shoulders rigid with the kind of anger he'd always worn like armor. My mother's eyes darted nervously around the crowded room until they finally landed on the work. I watched the exact moment recognition hit them both. Their steps faltered simultaneously, like they'd walked into an invisible wall. My father's face shifted from confusion to fury in seconds. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, her perfectly manicured fingers trembling against her lips. They stood there, frozen in front of a larger-than-life reflection of their worst selves, displayed for everyone to see. A few people nearby realized who they were. The faces matched too perfectly to be coincidence. Whispers started, sharp and quick, spreading through the gallery like wildfire. A man I recognized as a local journalist raised his eyebrows, glancing between the canvas and my parents like he'd just stumbled into the story of the year. My father turned, searching the crowd with predatory focus, and found me. Our eyes locked. For a heartbeat, the entire room fell away and it was just us, father and daughter, staring across an impossible distance. "Hey, down," he hissed when he reached me, his voice low but shaking with barely contained rage. "Now." I met his glare evenly, refusing to flinch. "No." His face went bright red, a vein pulsing visibly at his temple. "This is slander. This is defamation. We will sue you into the ground." "It's a painting," I said calmly, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "But if you want to talk about the real events behind it, I have a journal full of dates, details, and witnesses. We can take that to court if you'd like. Truth and consequences, remember. That's literally the theme of this competition." His mouth opened, then closed abruptly. For once in his life, he had no immediate comeback, no weapon to wield against me. My mother hovered behind him, her eyes glazed with something that looked disturbingly like panic. "Sarah, please," she whispered urgently. "We're all ready. Things are bad. The business is struggling. People stopped trusting your father after those rumors started at work, after the police thing, after your little series went around online. This will ruin us." The words hit me, but not the way she meant them to. All those years they told me I'd fail without them, that I was nothing on my own, that my art was worthless. And now my art had the power to ruin them. I felt both powerful and strangely, unexpectedly sad. "You did that to yourselves," I said quietly. "I just painted what happened." The judges called everyone to attention for the awards announcement. My heart hammered against my ribs as they listed honorable mentions, then third place, then second. When they announced the grand prize winner, I heard my name echo through the warehouse. For a second, I genuinely thought I'd misheard. Then the applause crashed over me like a wave and the room seemed to tilt sideways. I walked to the front on unsteady legs, my vision tunneling as I accepted the certificate and the envelope containing the grant check. Camera flashes popped like small explosions. Someone asked me to say a few words. I stepped up to the microphone, my fingers gripping the edge of the podium for balance. My parents stood at the back of the room, small and tense beneath their own cracked, towering faces on the wall. "This piece is about what happens," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "when the people who are supposed to protect you become the ones who break you instead. When they care more about their image than your happiness, your safety, your future. Sometimes the only way to survive is to tell the truth so loudly it drowns out their lies." A hush fell over the crowd, the kind of silence that feels electric. Took a breath. To everyone who was told their dreams were a phase, or a disappointment, or a waste of potential, this is for you. You're not crazy. You're not broken. And you don't owe anyone your silence. The applause this time felt different. Not just polite, but thunderous, like something fundamental inside the room had shifted. People were standing. Some were crying. I stepped down from the podium, and for the first time in my life, I didn't look for my parents' reaction. I didn't need it. I didn't want it. That day, a local news segment ran a story about the teenage artist whose parents tried to silence her truth. The video went viral within hours. Clients quietly stopped calling my father's struggling business. My mother withdrew even further at work, eventually taking an extended leave that everyone knew was really a forced resignation. Their carefully constructed world began to crumble, bit by bit, under the weight of consequences they'd tried so desperately to avoid. As I packed up my supplies that night, exhausted but strangely calm, one final question lingered in my mind. Aimed not just at me, but at anyone listening. Anyone who'd ever been broken by the people who were supposed to love them most. When success finally finds you after years of being crushed, will you use it to heal yourself, or to make sure those who hurt you feel every ounce of the pain they caused? I thought that was the end of the story. I thought winning was enough. But 11 years later, my phone would light up with 99 missed calls, and I'd have to answer that question for real. 11 years later, I was 27 years old, and my phone lit up on my studio table like a bomb about to detonate. 99 missed calls. All from the same number, the number I had muted, then blocked, then unblocked so I could see it flash across my screen and choose not to answer. My parents' house line. The words from that night when I was 16 echoed in my head like a recording I couldn't erase. "You'll be back begging in a month." I glanced up at the wall in front of me where a much newer painting hung, part of a series that had toured 3 countries, been written about in art magazines, and studied in university classes. This one showed a phone exploding with light, 99 missed calls glowing across the screen. In the reflection on the glass surface, you could just barely make out a pair of older, desperate faces, blurred but unmistakable. Behind the phone, the silhouette of a woman stood at an open window, looking out at a city instead of back at the ringing device. That woman was me. My career had taken off after that competition in ways I never could have imagined. The grant paid for the rest of art school. Commissions followed. Gallery representations. International exhibitions. I taught workshops to young artists who'd been told their dreams didn't matter. I sold prints that people hung in their homes like declarations of independence. I'd signed with a gallery that understood I wasn't just painting pretty pictures. I was painting survival, resistance, truth. People who grew up like I did saw themselves in my work and wrote to me from all over the world, telling me my art had given them permission to leave, to speak up, to stop apologizing for wanting more. Meanwhile, my parents' lives had followed the exact path I'd imagined in that brutal portrait years ago. The whispers became public knowledge. Clients abandoned my father's business after the article about the missing daughter and the silenced artist went viral. A series of bad investments tipped them over the edge financially. The house I'd grown up in, the one with the perfect lawn and the perfect facade, was sold to cover mounting debts. They moved into a cramped apartment far from the manicured neighborhood they'd once bragged about at dinner parties. I learned these details not because I went looking for them, but because the internet never forgets and our hometown loved gossip more than it loved the truth. The first time my mother called after years of total silence, I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was smaller, frayed at the edges. "Sarah, we're not doing well. Your father's health. We could really use your help. Just call me back. Please." I didn't. Not then. Instead, I went to my studio and painted, channeling that complicated knot of pity and rage into color and form. It wasn't simple hatred anymore. It was heavier, more tangled. Anger laced with a memory of being a 16-year-old girl standing on a cold sidewalk with nowhere to go and no one to call. Now, on this ordinary Tuesday, the screen screamed 99 missed calls at me like an accusation. My chest felt tight, my breath short. Not from fear, but from the crushing weight of what picking up or not picking up would mean. I let it ring one more time, watching the number flash. Then finally, for the first time in 11 years, I answered. Silence crackled on the line for 2 long seconds. Then my mother's voice came through, raw and hoarse. "Sarah." I could hear noise in the background. Hospital monitors beeping, distant Pennsylvania announcements, the mechanical hum of medical equipment. "We've been trying to reach you," she said, like it was an explanation, like it absolved anything. "I noticed," I said, keeping my tone carefully neutral. "What do you want?" There was a pause, and then my father's voice came through, weaker than I'd ever heard it, stripped of all its usual authority. We need help. The medical bills, the debts. We're losing everything." A bitter laugh rose in my throat before I could stop it. "I lost everything at 16, I said quietly. "We were wrong," he said, the words dragged out like they physically hurt to say. "About your art. About the way we treated you. I know it's too late to ask for forgiveness, but please. We're begging you." The word begging hung in the air between us, heavy with devastating irony. They had once told me I'd come back begging within a month. Now, 11 years later, they were the ones on their knees. Even if I couldn't see it, I could hear it in every syllable. For several seconds I didn't speak. My mind replayed images in rapid succession. The door slamming in my face, the police station interrogation, the shredded acceptance letter, my mother's tears in that cafe when she tried to buy my silence, the way they'd sabotaged my scholarship, the way they tried to paint me as unstable and ungrateful to anyone who would listen. Then other images flooded in. My first solo exhibition, the message from a stranger who said my work had given them the courage to leave an abusive home, the teenager who'd shown up at my book signing with paint-stained hands and said, "My parents hate my art too, but I'm not quitting because of you." I had a choice to make. And whatever I chose next would define not just who I was to them, but who I was to myself. I walked slowly to the window of my studio, looking out over the city that had become my real home, the place I'd built from nothing after they'd thrown me away. "Here's the thing," I said slowly, choosing each word carefully. "I built this life without you. Every canvas, every paycheck, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt I pushed through. You weren't there. You were the reason I had to fight this hard in the first place." My mother's voice trembled. "We know. And we're sorry. Truly. Can we at least see you? Try to fix things." My eyes stung, but I refused to let the tears fall. I'd cried enough for these people. "You want forgiveness now that you've lost everything," I murmured. "Would you have called if you were still in that big house with your perfect reputation and your perfect lie about having a doctor daughter?" Silence answered me, louder and more honest than any words could have been. I already knew the truth. They wouldn't have. This wasn't about me. It was about desperation. I could have hung up right then. Let them drown in the consequences they'd poured on me first when I was just a kid trying to survive. Part of me, the 16-year-old part that still remembered the cold and the fear and the hunger, wanted exactly that. Wanted them to suffer the way I'd suffered. But another part of me, smaller but more insistent, whispered something I didn't want to hear. That carrying this hatred forever would chain me to them just as tightly as obedience ever had. I took a deep, shaking breath. "I'm not your safety net," I said firmly. "I won't be your bank. I won't erase what you did or pretend it didn't happen. I won't show up and play the role of the grateful daughter who forgives everything because family is family." Their breath caught audibly on the other end. But I continued, surprising even myself with what came next. "I also won't be the person who watches you die on principle. I'll have my lawyer contact the hospital about a payment plan for the immediate medical bills. It'll go through a foundation, anonymously. Not my name. You won't get my forgiveness just because you're scared or broke or finally realized you were wrong. Forgiveness has to be earned. Slowly. Over time. Through actual change and accountability. And even then you may never fully get it. But you also won't be homeless or dying because of me. Because I refuse to become as cruel as you were." My father started to speak. His voice thick with emotion, but I cut him off. "This is not a reconciliation," I said clearly. "This is not me coming home. This is not us being a family again. This is me choosing not to become the kind of person who uses someone else's suffering as revenge, even when they deserve it. That's it. That's all this is." There was a ragged, broken sob on the other end of the line. My mother, I think, though I couldn't be sure. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Thank you, Sarah. We don't deserve." "You're right," I interrupted quietly. "You don't." I ended the call before they could say anything else, before the conversation could turn into something messier or more complicated. My hands shook violently as I set the phone down on the table, but there was a strange, unexpected lightness in my chest. Like a window had been cracked open in a room that had been sealed shut for too long. I walked back to the painting of the glowing phone and the woman by the window, picked up a fine brush, and added one tiny new detail to the corner. In the reflection on the glass screen, barely visible unless you looked closely, I painted the faint outline of a door in the distance. Not fully open. Not fully closed. A possibility. Not a promise. Because this was the truth I'd finally come to understand. I hadn't gone back begging in a month like they'd predicted. Instead, 11 years later, they were the ones begging me to pick up. And I did, but on my terms. I helped them, but I didn't forgive them. I chose compassion, but I didn't forget. I refused to let their cruelty turn me into a cruel person. But I also refused to let their desperation erase what they'd done to me. So now I'll leave you with the question that has haunted me since that first night when I was 16 years old, standing on a dark sidewalk with nowhere to go. If the people who threw you out, who watched you break and called it discipline, who destroyed your dreams and told you it was for your own good. If those people showed up years later with empty hands and desperate eyes, would you open the door? Or would you let them stand outside in the cold they once shoved you into and finally understand what it felt like? Drop your answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know, because I'm still figuring out if I made the right choice. Or if there even is a right choice when the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally taught you that love always comes with conditions. If this story hit you where it hurts, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe because trust me, there are more stories like this that need to be told. Stories about survival, about revenge, about the complicated, messy truth of what happens when family becomes the enemy and you have to save yourself.